that moment when you go into a Northern Ireland bar and are immediately accused of being a bad person because you're from the United States. Doesn't feel very good. Culture shock, I guess. But we're staying in this cute little coastal town, and we went to just enjoy a beer, and we're like, we don't want to talk about anything or anything like that, and it just ended up with me in tears. So, if you're an American citizen, maybe just proceed with caution.
The crocodile tears. This is exactly why they encourage Canadian travelers to wear a Canadian flag, so they don't think we are one of them.
Oh, I'm so excited to ask every single American this question from now on. Who'd you vote for? Who'd you vote for? Who? Who? Who?
That is not what happened. We all know that is not what happened. I mean, she is a bad person, and she probably did get called a bad person, but it wasn't because she's American. Every single time someone finds out that I'm American, they always have sympathy for me. They're just like, oh, I'm so sorry what's happening to your country. That is not what happened. That lady is a Trumper, and someone called her out on it.
Tonight, a viral video from a pub in North Ireland has sparkling a global debate. An American tourist says she was judged and confronted about politics simply because she's from the United States of America. And the emotional moment has resulted in conversation about how supporters of Donald Trump and MAGA movement perceived around the world. Whether American tourists are now facing the political scrutiny abroad. Here is what happened and why the story is going viral. So before we continue, I want to give credit to all original creators of the TikTok clips used in this video. All clips belong to their respective creator and used here for commentary, news report, and education purpose only.
Did you see the clip of the American woman who was in the bar in the north of Ireland? Said she got into a conversation and she got a bit upset about it, and she was like warning other American tourists.
To a Northern Ireland bar and are immediately accused of being a bad person because you're from the United States.
She was quite vague in what the conversation was about, but I think I know what it was about because I went to her page and I found that she's sharing this type of content. And she's also made videos like this. So no, American tourists do not need to be cautious when they're coming to Ireland. Fascist, MAGA, Trump supporters need to be cautious because you're not welcome when you come to Ireland. So save your tears for someone else.
Accused of being a bad person because you're from the United States.
Or maybe they're mad at you because you did vote for the guy who led to this. An Irish man who was living in El Paso, Texas, and married to an American who is legally allowed to live in America and was awaiting his green card hearing. Well, ICE picked him up, threw him into an ICE detention facility, and he's been there for months. He was there for so long that he missed his green card hearing. So you had the gall to go to a country that this guy's from and sit in a pub and hope that no one would ask you that difficult question about who you voted for. Honey, your actions have consequences. And this is the same guy who called into one of those shows and told the world about the conditions in these ICE facilities, about how people fight over the amount of food that they get because they don't get a lot, how he saw people unalived right in front of him, how the conditions are disgusting. He hasn't been...
So this woman, I guess she was in Ireland visiting, and there's other videos on her account that goes into more detail, but for the gist of it is that she walked in, there was news on the TV, they were sitting around having conversation. They realized she's American, and they asked her who she voted for. She refused to answer. She refused to answer. Now, if somebody asked me who I voted for, I would proudly tell them who I voted for because I'm not ashamed of it. And even though my candidate didn't win, I'm not sorry that I voted for them. Trump supporters, if you ask them who they voted for, a lot of times, I'm not saying them all, but a lot of times they won't answer. They will refuse to answer. when you come across somebody like that, that means they voted for Trump because they're ashamed of their vote. So you can't blame people from other countries to look at us side-eyed, because I know I would. But one thing's for sure, I would want to make the people in that country, whatever country I'm in, I would want to let them know, hey, I didn't have anything to do with this. My vote went for somebody else. It did not go for Trump. And we could have a grand old conversation after that. So stop with your boo-hoo and get more MAGA tears, right? More MAGA tears because of your choice. Quite honestly, I think it's hilarious, but that's just me.
Lady, no. Please tell me that is not the narrative that you're spinning in your head about this. Really? Okay, in your other video, you came right out and said that they weren't even directing those comments at you or your husband. They were just having a general political conversation. So, how did anybody call you out? If they're not directing those comments at you, then they're not directing those comments at you. They're having a private conversation that you're eavesdropping on. Rude. Then, do you really think that your choices don't have consequences? Your choices have consequences. You're not free of those consequences. According to you and people like you, you should have to live with those consequences for the rest of your life. If you make a choice and have a consequence from it, you and people who vote like you think you should have to live with that forever. So congratulations. You get to now live with that forever. This is what you wanted. This is what you wanted. Trying to imply that you didn't vote for who you voted for, when if anyone goes and looks at your account, just about any video you make is a Trump supporting video. So clearly that's who you voted for. This is what you wanted. This is what you wanted. Also, I am so proud that for the very first time ever in your life, you got to experience 15 minutes of what it's like to be either an immigrant or a person of color in America. Oh my God! Isn't that exciting for you? You got to experience the world that you are creating for them firsthand. And you only got like a 15-minute taste of it. How wonderful. Stop complaining. This is what you wanted. This is what you wanted. So live with the consequences of it forever. Live with it. Also, the audacity, the American caucasity to walk into Northern Ireland and say that you're there because you want to see the entirety of the UK. You don't know anything about Ireland. And also to expect for the people of Ireland to not be political and to not have opinions when you walked into their bar where they were already watching the news. And then you acted like that.
So I'm going to be like probably person 12,662 on this, but you're not upset because you're accused of being an American and immediately equated as a bad person. You're upset because you are a MAGA voter who realizes people see you as a bad person because of your choice to be a MAGA voter. And like many MAGA voters, you are very inherently selfish and you don't understand how your actions are impacting others. And now that those actions are coming back to make you feel uncomfortable, you're even more confused and frustrated with it. I could say a whole bunch of things about this, but what I do want to say is try to give you an idea of why you're feeling this way and trying to make it click, because it has yet to click in your head. Okay, in 2008, I went to Germany on a vacation to visit friends of mine. And when I was there, I was looking to get a German flag because my mother wanted a flag as a souvenir. I had the hardest time in the world finding it. And I remember talking with my friend about it and her family, and they were like, Germans are still upset and sad and feel immense guilt over the shit that Hitler put everyone in the world through. And they feel shame and just have that weight on their shoulders for generations. So that right there, this is your introduction to what that is. Because while he is not quite yet on that playing field, he is close because of the actions that this man and his administration is doing. The people who are dying in other countries because of lack of funding to USAID, the people who are going to suffer here in this country, who are from marginalized populations, as well as populations like you. Because if you live in a area of the country that's going to be hit by a storm or anything, and you're not going to get funding to rebuild or anything like that, there are thousands of ways that people are going to be impacted by this man. All of this equals shame that you should feel, that probably your children are going to feel, that your grandchildren are going to feel, because mom and dad didn't have the wherewithal to go look up this person and realize, oh my God, that's a bad choice. And if I choose to do this, I'm going to be equated as a shitty person for the rest of my life. And my family and generations to come are going to feel like shit. So yeah, this is guilt that you signed up for willingly, happily, that you are still posting and reposting videos about up until a few days ago. So you deserve every last feeling of discomfort that you get. And honestly, for most of us, it's not enough. For the pain that we're seeing members of disenfranchised communities feel and experience, it is not enough. You should feel as uncomfortable as possible, because shame on you. Fucking shame on you.
Now, she goes on to say that the bartender recognized she had an American accent and then asked, oh, you're from America, who'd you vote for? And here's the thing, okay? The Americans need to understand the rest of the world does not like Trump, okay? Trump is actually, and this regime is doing a lot of damage across the world. We're the bullies, all right? So as long as because I've traveled quite a bit since the Cheeto's been back in office, and every time somebody asks, like, are you American? I'm like, yeah, I'm so sorry. You just apologize for it. And then they're like, oh my God, I feel so bad for you. Like, that's like, pity is usually the sentiment you get. They don't hate you unless you're like, oh yeah, no, I voted for this. I'm really excited that this is happening. This is what I support. Then yeah, you are a bad person. And yeah, they're going to not like you. You're probably not going to be welcome. So if you're worried about traveling abroad and because of Trump and you're American, just as long as you're a good person, didn't vote for him, just tell people that and everyone will be very kind to you. But nobody likes Trump. And I know that the right really thinks that the world loves Trump too, like they do. And no, it's just this little cult that they have.
I watched the whole thing, and if you do get through the entire 40-second video, you might actually feel bad for her. In fact, at the end, she even said that if you are an American citizen, interesting choice of words, that you should proceed with caution. But in her follow-up video, she reveals that the actual reasons why she was met with a bit of aggression on the part of locals is because they started talking about politics, and they asked her who did she vote for. And instead of outright answering and revealing who she voted for, she decided to say, and I quote, "I'm on vacation and want to get away from all of that." She said she also referred to Northern Ireland as the UK by mistake, and she couldn't believe that they were reacting so coldly to her, right? And with a bit of hostility. But as an American living abroad, I personally do not find her behavior or language shocking at all. And I'll tell you why. I've said this again and again on my page that we Americans tend to grow up in a bubble. Obviously, not every single American, but US society really, really tries its best to keep its citizens contained in a little American patriotic bubble where only our way of life matters, where we're only exposed to international news and events if it somehow involves us, where talking politics is controversial. Even before the 2016 election, it's always been a controversial, kind of a taboo topic to bring up politics, whether you're at the office, whether you're at Thanksgiving dinner, whether you're at a bar with friends on a Friday night. At least it's been that way for as long as I can remember, for as long as I've been alive. Politics has been sold to the American people as something that is boring, right? It's burdensome, it's complicated, and You don't want to have to deal with that. Nothing ever good comes from talking politics because politics is not sexy, but you know what is? Reality TV. Monday Night Football, People Magazine, and Perez Hilton. The endless entertainment and distractions. So when this American left that bubble, she got a huge wake-up call. Because for her, politics isn't important. For her, politics is something that you can avoid. Her vote, assuming for Trump, and its consequences are far away from her, okay? She left them at the US eastern border all the way across the Atlantic. She doesn't have to worry about that now. She's on vacation. So when these Americans travel to other countries and other people bring up politics, because politics does matter, politics is important, they are left stunned. They're left speechless. They become uncomfortable. And her not realizing her error when she mistakenly referred to Northern Ireland as the UK, that is just further proof of how this bubble remains ironclad even in 2026. Because so many Americans are clueless about the history and cultures of other countries. I mean, they're also pretty clueless about the history of our own country. Even just on TikTok, I'm seeing just how many Americans had no idea prior to this month of our involvement in Iran's government during the 1950s. And to be fair, I never learned about it in school or in the news either. I ended up learning about it because I was interested after reading a book called Reading Lolita in Tehran by Azar Nafisi. So I read the book and I started learning slowly about our involvement in the overthrow of the Shah and how the revolution came about. To be honest, I don't know what the solution is. I know that a lot of non-Americans like to say that Americans just need to start traveling and they just need to get a passport and book the flight, go to other countries. And that is much easier said than done. Of course, travel is one of the greatest teachers that you can have, right? But for many Americans, especially depending on where they live in the US and where they're heading to, travel can be extremely expensive. Also, I've met a ton of Americans who have either traveled or lived abroad for a really long time, and their way of life, their way of thinking still remains extremely US-centric. And I admit it is hard to shake certain habits. It is hard to shift certain points of view that you've had for nearly your entire life, especially after being fed years and years and years of propaganda of us being the greatest, freest, most powerful country in the world, and every other country is simply mediocre. But the things that have helped me deprogram, let's say, have been for sure, number one, attending school outside of the US. So after working for a few years, I had graduated college already in 2013. I decided to take a year off and go back to school. I got a postgraduate degree in international cooperation and development, and when I tell you my life was changed, I learned so much, not only about international affairs and, other countries, but I learned so much about my own country, about the US. The second thing that has helped me is being integrated into Italian and European life. So I am an Italian resident, taxpayer, citizen, language speaker, but living life here, not as a visitor who just observes, but as someone who actively partakes in everyday local life, is something that really changes your experience when you're abroad. Like I said, I know a lot of people who have moved here from the US, but they are pretty much living not exactly the same, but a very similar lifestyle to the one that they were living back in the States. Number three, kind of related, but it's been meeting international people from every corner of the world. So obviously I'm from New York, so I've met my share of international people, but here in Milan, I've met a lot more internationals, and obviously I also am one, so it is easier to meet because not only am I seeking other internationals, but I also attract that, so it is easier for me. But when I tell you I have met people from literally South America, but also in New York. I met people from South America, but you know, I'm meeting people from Southeast Asia and, you know, Siberia, and it's been amazing. And then the last thing I would say again is reading and learning about other countries. So like I mentioned before, I already did this in the US because I had a really long commute from the Bronx into Manhattan and vice versa. So I had a lot of time on my hands and I needed a lot of reading material. So I would go to the library. It's actually one of the things I miss most about my life in New York. I would go to the New York Public Library, check out a book every 3-ish weeks, and I would mostly focus on immigrant stories and historical international events. And they gave me such insight into worlds that I never knew before. So closing message to all my fellow Americans. Politics is important, especially US politics. Politics is discussed in other countries, and you most likely will be asked about it, particularly in this moment in time.
That moment when you go into a Northern Ireland bar and are immediately accused of being a bad person because you're from the United States.
This is exactly what I've been on about. Okay? These are the very same people going around telling you that they're Irish. I'm Irish. My family came here to escape the genocide. Her family, probably this. Probably this, and that would explain why she's in Northern Ireland, aka the part of Ireland under colonial occupation still. And the jokes write themselves, because she voted for Donald Trump, whose mother is Scottish. She voted for her kinfolk. If you are American and you voted for Trump, you do not get to leave the country. You get to stay here in this hellscape that you created and not going across the globe tormenting innocent people, but especially Irish people. Nobody's hating on you because you were American. You see Irish people in my comment section hating on me for being American? No, because I didn't vote for a child-touching dictator.
So what do you think? Should a traveler be questioned about their country politics when they are abroad? Or should it be a personal political choice remain private? The viral moment in Northern Ireland showed that how deeply global politics can be shaped every day. Encounter, as always, we will continue following the conversation and reaction around the world. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe for more global news and analytics.